This video is sponsored by Surfshark. A VPN or virtual private network allows you to securely and safely use the internet by encrypting all information exchanged between the device and the internet. This is important not only at home, but especially when using potentially insecure public Wi-Fi. Hiding your true IP address protects your identity online, preventing your location, purchase history and download history from being tracked to you, stopping advertising companies from collecting and storing data on you. The Clean Web feature blocks all ads, trackers and malware. With over 3,200 servers in 95 countries, you'll find a server near you delivering great bandwidth, and with Surfshark you can even change your virtual location, unblocking content libraries for streaming services like Netflix that are only available in certain countries. TV series and films only available to stream in certain regions are now available at your fingertips. Use my code INTELREPORT using the link in the description below to get 83% off plus an extra 3 months completely free. Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to giving it a try. In the early morning of the 16th of December 1944, residents in the small town of Stavelot in Belgium were awakened by the sounds of distant thunder. Dressed in nightgowns, some went to their windows and saw flashes of light illuminating the eastern night sky. Many went back to sleep, confident that their town was not in danger. 3 months earlier, the ascendant Allied armies had liberated Stavelot from the German army, driving the occupiers back in disarray to the Reich's border. Since then, the locals had become accustomed to seeing powerful US Army mechanized columns drive through the town on their way to the front, while vengeful members of the Belgian resistance offered to join them. The citizens of Stavelot believed, not without merit, that Nazi Germany was on the verge of total defeat, and there was nothing to worry about. However, the mood shifted the following day. The sounds of artillery fire grew closer, and soon defeated American soldiers began trickling into the town from the east. Some panicked men fled over Stavelot's bridge in jeeps, while others began to hurriedly prepare defensive positions. The civilians were appalled by the sight of their liberators in retreat, and many quickly packed farm carts with food and valuables to join in the exodus. Rumours spread of SS troops advancing on the town, while murdering any civilians they came across. By the night of the 17th of December, enemy tanks had taken up position on the outskirts of Stavelot, and were prepared to assault the town's strategically vital bridge the following morning. There was no denying it, the Germans had returned, and Stavelot, along with other small towns in the Ardennes, were about to play an important role in the Battle of the Bulge. Plans for the German offensive were set in motion in September of 1944, the same month Stavelot and most of Belgium had been liberated by the Allies. In late July, the combined US, Commonwealth and Free French armies broke out of Normandy and advanced rapidly across France. Paris was liberated on the 25th of August, and the German armies on the Western Front were routed with heavy casualties. A sense of victory fever soon infected the Allied High Command, as Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower set his sights on invading Germany itself. However, the German armies managed to stabilise the front by mid-September, as the Allies outran their supply lines and faced more difficult terrain. The Allies made 2 major attempts to force their way into Germany before the end of the year. Operation Market Garden was an airborne operation intended to capture bridges over the Rhine River in the Netherlands, but failed when the final bridge could not be taken in time. To the south, the US First Army launched Operation Queen and captured the German city of Aachen while gaining a foothold in the Hürtgen forest. Yet, the difficult terrain and tenacious enemy resistance caused heavy casualties, and the Americans were unable to break the German defensive line. By early December, the Allies settled into a defensive posture while their leaders plotted their next moves. Despite their defensive successes, the Wehrmacht was in a desperate state. The Western Allies and the Soviet Union were poised to invade the Third Reich from 2 fronts, and defeat seemed inevitable. However, the Führer was convinced that Germany could still win the war. On the 16th of December, he outlined an offensive to his generals that would break the American-held lines in the Ardennes region, capture the Belgian port of Antwerp, and trap the Northern Commonwealth armies in a massive pocket. The German General Staff believed the Führer's plan was far too ambitious and proposed alternatives, but their leader would not relent. Under a shroud of secrecy, Preparations for the offensive began in late October and were completed by the second week of December. Meanwhile, the Allies were almost completely oblivious to the threat facing them. Supreme Allied Headquarters believed the Ardennes was too heavily forested and hilly for the Germans to launch a major offensive, and assigned less importance to the region. Local American commanders manned the area with a mixture of understrength veteran units or new recruits who had never faced combat before. Several warning signs of a German build-up were dismissed as Allied leaders were too focused on the offensive measures they planned to take in the upcoming year. On the 15th of December, the American 12th Army Group in the region numbered almost 229,000 men and less than 1,000 tanks. They had no idea they were about to be assaulted by over 400,000 Germans, backed by over 1,200 tanks and armoured vehicles. At 5:20 am on the 16th of December, German artillery opened an extensive barrage in the Ardennes, beginning the Battle of the Bulge. The offensive was split into three prongs. In the north, the 6th Panzer Army's objective was to sweep the American defenders off the prominent Elsenborn Ridge, before crossing the Meuse River and turning north to capture Antwerp. In the centre, the 5th Panzer Army planned to capture the key road junctions of Saint-Vit and Bastogne, before also crossing the Meuse en route to Antwerp. Finally, the German 7th Army in the south would provide flank security for the panzer spearheads as they raced into the Allies' rear area. Speed was the essential element in the attack, and Antwerp was expected to be taken in 4 days. The Führer counted on the poor winter weather to ground superior Allied air power and give his units a chance to advance quickly through the rough terrain of the Ardennes. Most American units were caught off guard by the sudden offensive. In the centre, the 28th and 106th Infantry Divisions found themselves under heavy assault by the 5th Panzer Army, which quickly overran many frontline units. One company commander telephoned his battalion commander to report the attack, but instead heard a heavily accented voice on the other end of the line, "We are here," before the line went dead. 2 regiments of the 106th Division were encircled in the Schnee-Eifel forest by the second day of the offensive, and were eventually forced to surrender on the 21st. The 9,000 Americans taken prisoner in the Schnee-Eifel represented the largest American mass surrender ever in Europe. The remnants of the 106th Division, along with units of the 9th Armoured Division, formed a scratch team to defend Saint-Vit, hoping to deny the critical road junction to the Germans for as long as possible. However, American resistance was far more resolute in the north. At the tiny village of Lanzerath, 22 men of the 99th Infantry Division held up a regiment of 500 German paratroopers for the entirety of the 16th of December before they were overrun. The spirited defence of Lanzerath significantly delayed the advance of Kampfgruppe Piper, a powerful SS armoured column expected to be the first German unit over the Meuse River. Led by their ruthless commander Joachim Piper, the SS troops sped up their attack the following day and surprised an American artillery observation battalion at the Bonnier crossroads. After a short and decisive firefight, Piper's men shot 84 prisoners in an event which came known as the Malmedy Massacre. News of the SS war crimes made its way through American ranks and steeled the resolve of many GIs to stand and fight. Despite being taken by surprise, Supreme Allied Headquarters in Paris had a clear picture on German intentions by the end of the first day of the attack. General Eisenhower ordered all Allied reserves to be transferred to the Ardennes in order to blunt the enemy offensive, including the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, which had been resting and refitting after hard fighting in Operation Market Garden. General George Patton's Third Army in Alsace-Lorraine was also ordered to turn north and prepare for a counterattack. Superior Allied logistics made it possible for Eisenhower to redirect 250,000 troops to the front in a matter of days. The battle was now a race against time to determine whether German forces could reach their objectives before Allied reinforcements arrived. In the north, Kampfgruppe Piper captured Stavelot on the 18th of December and had broken through the Allied lines. However, the 800 vehicles under Piper's command could not continue their advance due to American engineers blowing the precious few bridges in the area. By the second day of the offensive, Piper's opportunity was lost. This proved to be the closest that German forces came to achieving their objectives on the northern shoulder, as the rest of the 6th Panzer Army failed to capture the Elsenborn Ridge. Despite being outnumbered 5-1, the American 99th Infantry Division inflicted casualties on the German forces at an 18-1 ratio. Together with the 2nd Infantry Division and the newly arrived 82nd Airborne Division, the Americans had defeated the northern German prong by the 20th of December. Furthermore, Kampfgruppe Peiper was soon surrounded and destroyed by the 23rd. The only hope for the German offensive now lay in the centre. Due to the collapse of many US infantry units in the area, the 5th Panzer Army made steady progress and was now putting heavy pressure on St. Vith by the 18th of December. Yet, the defenders continued to hold their ground in the face of superior enemy numbers. Further to the south, German tanks also approached the key junction of Bastogne, but failed to seize the town in a direct assault thanks to American rearguard actions. The following day saw the arrival of the 101st Airborne along with elements of the 10th Armoured Division, which took up defensive positions around Bastogne. With his forces desperately behind schedule, the Führer ordered Bastogne to be bypassed and cut off. The paratroopers and tanks trapped within the town now settled in for a brutal siege. The Battle of St. Vith came to a climax on the 20th of December, when German forces launched an all-out assault on the American perimeter. Despite their heroic last stand, the 106th Infantry and 9th Armoured Divisions were finally forced to retreat, and the town fell to the enemy. Meanwhile, all roads to Bastogne were cut off by the 21st of December, and German units began a siege of the town. On the 22nd, the local German commander called on the Americans in Bastogne to surrender, to which the commander of the 101st Airborne Division, Brigadier General Antony McAuliffe, simply replied, "Nuts." On that same day, General Patton launched his counterattack from the south, hoping to lift the siege. Despite multiple determined attacks, his paratroopers and the 10th Armoured Division continued to hold their ground. The following day, the 23rd of December, saw clear weather for the first time since the German offensive began. Bastogne was resupplied by air, while Allied fighter bombers smashed enemy supply columns in the Ardennes. Despite constant air attacks, the 5th Panzer Army's spearheads continued to advance on the Meuse, but were quickly losing momentum. The leading German units ran into British tanks just miles from the Meuse crossings, and were forced to halt on Christmas Eve. A combined British and American counterattack destroyed the enemy's spearheads on Christmas Day, signalling the failure of the German offensive. Patton's counterattack gained steam, and Bastogne was relieved on the 26th of December, after which a short lull developed while the Allies prepared a larger counter-offensive to push the Germans back to the Reich. Hoping to restart his offensive, the Führer ordered a twin blow on the ground and in the air on New Year's Day. Operation Nordwind was a diversionary attack on the Allies in Alsace-Lorraine, but the main event was Operation Bodenplatte, an attempt to re-establish German air superiority over the battlefield. Over 1,000 Luftwaffe fighters took to the sky to take part in a surprise attack on Allied airfields across northern Europe. Although the assault saw initial successes, the Allied air forces recovered quickly and counterattacked. In one of the largest air battles in history, the Germans suffered massive losses, and its fighters were forced to retreat in disarray. It would prove to be the Luftwaffe's last large-scale action of the war. On the 4th of January, British, Canadian and American forces launched their combined counter-offensive. Although they numbered 705,000 men compared to the enemy's 400,000, the counter-offensive was slow and hard-fought. The insufficient roads and return of poor winter weather made the advance a slog, and most German units were able to execute a fighting withdrawal from the Bulge. Houffalize was captured on the 16th of January, and St. Vith was retaken 7 days later. By the 25th of January, the Germans had retreated to their original lines from 1 month earlier, bringing an end to the battle. The Battle of the Bulge proved to be the costliest campaign of the war for the United States, which lost 90,000 men, while the British suffered 1,400 casualties. Germany lost approximately 100,000 men in its last major offensive of the Second World War in the West. Soldiers on both sides committed atrocities, as German units executed up to 1,000 civilians and prisoners of war, while American soldiers massacred enemy prisoners as well. The campaign was fought in brutal winter conditions, with the average temperature being 20 degrees Fahrenheit or -7 degrees Celsius. Men on both sides, along with civilians, suffered from frostbite. The battle exhausted Germany's last reserves in men and air power, sealing its ultimate defeat in the coming year. On the 12th of January 1945, the Soviet Red Army launched a massive winter offensive, which shattered the Wehrmacht on the Eastern Front. In March, the Western Allies crossed the Rhine River in force, breaching the Reich's last defensive line. With no more reserves to stop the combined Allied advance, Germany was doomed. 2 months later, Nazi Germany officially surrendered, bringing the Second World War in Europe to an end. Thanks again to our sponsor Surfshark. Use my code INTELREPORT using the link in the description below to get 83% off plus an extra 3 months completely free. With a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk to giving it a try.